Good morning, everyone. We're live here at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, ready to film the TV side of office hours. And what a great way to start the day here early in the morning. We have Sana Azam, founder and CEO of Meta Speakers and Experts Market. Welcome to Office Hours and good morning.
Good morning from Dubai. So excited to be on this show.
Well, we're on the exact opposite time frames then, and you should be raring and ready to go. So carry the three of us here, David Marino and Michael Bomola. Welcome as well.
Morning.
Good morning.
You guys are full of energy. All right. Excellent. Well, you have created an expert market platform. You know, I just had the CEO and founder of Masterclass on the playbook, and we were talking about, you know, the marketplace itself. And I always tell people, determinative upon, you know, whether it's NFTs, which Mike Bomola is an expert at, or real estate, or stocks, or whatever it may be, you have to look at the market makers, and the margins. And that's what creates a marketplace. For you in this speakers market where things changed very quickly over the last 2 years, and they can change by the day. I mean, I've never canceled and changed more speaking engagements than I have in the last. But to be honest, I've never had more opportunity to speak than I have before, including when I started, and my only objective was to speak for free. Which should have been the most I've ever spoke. How and what is different about the marketplace, the experts marketplace that you've created?
Amazing question. So when it comes to the world of expertise and knowledge trading, as we call it, so everything's changed. Everything's been flipped upside down. We had so many of the big players who've had long careers, with their talks, now all of a sudden not being very happy with being on camera and speaking, with a blazer but with a pajama bottom, and maybe not getting the reaction from the audience and where they really feed off that energy, and just not wanting to do that. You had some rookies who are tech savvy, who are really excelling in that space because they're just loving the fact that not necessarily having, 200 eyes on them when they're speaking, and they're just good with technology, so they're thriving. And then all of a sudden the world became really flat. You had speeches from in Australia and New York and Sweden, all over the place, and now everyone is kind of being able to book everyone very easily digitally. So there's definitely been that ease and that movement of trade when it comes to speakers, because all of a sudden you're not flying somebody in, you're not booking somebody. And also to factor in that virtual speeches were operating at a haircut. So they were also just cheaper. So some speaker that would go for 100K all of a sudden is becoming more accessible and affordable because it's a digital speech.
And I want to stop you there for a sec, because that's really, really good point, because there's a little bit of a nuance there that's even more advantageous for speakers is, and I found this to be true. Not only could I do more speeches virtually. One day I did 3 speeches around the world, literally 3 speeches around the world, and work the time zone accordingly. But the expense side is not just that, $100,000 speaker will speak virtually for far less, but they're not taking on the $2 million of expense to fly everybody in for, the annual meeting or the sales meeting, or especially I found a huge difference in the bigger gatherings that would cost millions. They really didn't care what they paid for the speaker virtually, because they were literally realizing how much money they were wasting with some of these in-person opportunities, especially internal or customer based ones.
Yeah, the knowledge is there. You're getting the knowledge and the fact, but we are still a gathering, storytelling, humankind. Like that's never gonna change. There's a reason why people still go to church or mosque or wherever they're going. We like to congregate. And there's an intimacy and a connection that you get from meeting and listening to somebody live and getting those goosebumps live, which there's still tremendous value. And I don't think that's ever gonna stop, or else YouTube would have put everyone in the speaker space out of business. So we're still
Well,
going to be
plus, how do you get your selfies if you're not live, right?
exactly.
Amazing platform. Congrats on launching it and the success with it. With any like search based platform, and I'm featured on a couple of speaker platforms. You run into the user like falling into the same, like there's these 6 people up top, so they get selected over and over and over. How does your platform deal with that issue? And is there any supplementary business for speakers that are looking to improve their speeches? It seems like it would be a natural fit because you've got everybody on the talent side here, and then obviously be a better for Mena's business model if you're also elevating some of the speakers that are not getting booked as much.
Yeah. So we have literally booked people from all over the world because the access of the marketplace has now created just so much more talent. And we're not only talking about like the celebrities or already well-known and well-established talent, but we're also talking about business speakers that have a niche expertise that might not be known in, say, Bangladesh or in Dubai, but all of a sudden you're able to access them differently. And I think we're entering a space of micro marketing where people want to know detailed information from people that are absolute experts in their segment. So there's a huge appetite for that and worldwide. And do we play favorites? Speaker bureaus definitely play favorites, but a marketplace is a marketplace. The supply and demand element will tell you, the reviews will tell you if a person is doing a good job or not. And there's something really fair about that concept. So if somebody's delivering in their niche, then obviously it's almost like SEO. They're going to start ranking higher and people are going to start recommending them. And then they're going to be bringing more business for themselves, essentially.
So when you talk about the new rules for professional speaking, and we look at some of those that you're mentioning now, we include some of the throughout history, historic things that we consider make people great speakers. How do we balance the two of those? Because you mentioned storytelling, for example, one that's inherent in being a great communicator. And Dave always says, it's not what you say, it's what people hear. So we have to figure out an ability to connect with people so it resonates deeply with them. What are some of those tips and techniques that you tell to your speakers so that they're not only a great expert, because you have to be a great expert, but you have to be able to convey it to people in a way that they understand it?
Yes. So, we talk about 3 things. And that's the big differentiator from somebody who's earning, say, 4 or 5K to 15, 20, 30K, where I would say the bulk of the professional speaking business is within that space. We talk about, yes, what is the narrative? Like, what is the topic that you're talking about? And does your background lend credibility to it? So that's incredibly important. Do you have speaking skills? Are you good when you're on stage? Do people like listening to you? And then number 3, which is the one that becomes the accelerator for how much you earn and how much in demand you are, is really your brand, your personal brand, and the tribe and the followership that you have. And that becomes very much a marketing, branding, PR play. And so these things, the 2, yes, great. Those are quick fixes that you can learn and acquire very quickly. But the number 3 is a consistent basis of marketing and PR and really putting yourself out there and innovating in your space. Then great, you will start climbing the ladder as a professional speaker that gets booked around the world.
It's really interesting because as a professional speaker that gets booked around the world, I have found that the virtual branding side has overwhelmed the referral side. So in the past, you would count on live stages, which I prefer. If anyone wants to know what it's like to speak virtually, imagine sitting in a screen like this, and sometimes the only person you see is either yourself, or worse, the worst one that you have is you're speaking to thousands of people virtually, but there's an administrator taking notes, looking at that. That's the only person you're seeing, and they're not even watching you. And so now not only don't you get the energy as a speaker, and not only doesn't the crowd get the energy of you, but your energy sucked dry because you have someone that's, you know, completely ignoring you, doing their homework or whatever they're doing on the screen. But to that end, the advantage, you know, and I've taken advantage of this, is the virtual branding to create a market for yourself around the world, because you focus in the Middle East and North Africa, and you know, talk about a rare occasion, somebody reaching out to David Meltzer to speak, you know, for whatever niche it is or expertise they're looking for, was so rare. Now it's overwhelming, because not only can you reach them through your virtual branding, but actually you can target areas that haven't been targeted before in the competition. You can target the affluent areas, like in the Middle East, where you are. There's some really high paying gigs for American speakers. You can actually target there with far less competition. So, you know, when Pepsi in America is making a decision, there's, you know, Ed Milet, Dave Meltzer, Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's a matter of price, right? In the Middle East, there's very few people to choose from that they know of, because they haven't seen them on a live stage. And so how have you, or do you inspire or teach or train speakers like all of us in order to brand in the Middle East and North Africa, so that there's a bigger marketplace, a better choice for the companies that are on the other side of the market?
Amazing question. So we have several case studies. I mean, we've literally seen the rise of Gary Vee, when essentially very few knew who he was in the region a couple of years ago, to now actually have been here last week and done a considerable engagement. So I would say the best piece of advice would be to link up with the speaker bureaus, i.e. MENA speakers. And that's what we do with international speakers, is that we represent them in the region. We manage their engagements and handle it as a traditional speaker bureau. The other thing is, of course, to sign up on platforms and give yourself more visibility locally. But if you do have a local representative, then it's a sales team in a different region that's doing a job that you might necessarily not have done, essentially for free.
Awesome.
That's great. Sana, I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on this before you leave. You were born to a Palestinian refugee, and I'm sure, you know, that background, those stories of how it was in Palestine before he fled, or your mom fled. I'm not sure if it was your mom or your dad. It's part of your makeup and your DNA and the fabric of what you do. What role has that, you know, played in your life, and how has it driven your inspiration to start business and, you know, be who you are?
I just want to hug you right now. Question. Come here, David. Yes, what a wonderful question. It's the first time I ever get it, and I appreciate and acknowledge that. Yes, so it's definitely a core reason to what we're doing, and it's about inspiring and helping people find their way in life. Every time we have a speaker on stage, we get the thank you emails after it's saying, you know, I've started a new job, I've set up my own business, I've started my weight loss journey, I have, you know, found myself differently. And we know that happens every time somebody's on stage and they get inspired by your story, by the speaker's story. And that's really profound, to be able to influence people and change lives that way. That's a huge driver. And then the idea of justice, you know, doing right. What we do is we actually showcase a lot of minorities. And that is part of the reason why I set up MENA speakers in this region, because there was a low representation of, you know, non-white, sorry guys, you know, non-male speakers.
I was born this way. It's okay, don't worry.
It's not personal, but as a speaker myself in Sweden, I was the only young Arab female speaker quite often on stage. And I'm going, well, that's not great. Narratives should have more diversity. Knowledge belongs to all of us, and it should come from all of us. And so that's why, you know, we do work with young female ethnic minorities and Caucasians, of course, but across the board, and make sure that whenever there's, say, a panel discussion, that it's not just a male panel, but there's diversity in the conversation, and that there are lots of different people sharing their ideas and thoughts. And that's when you have a fruitful discussion that's really creating diversity of thought.
Amazing.
Congratulations on it. on everything. I mean, very, very impressive, and wish you the world of luck on that. MENA Speakers, MENA-speakers.com. Is there anywhere else where you'd like people to find you or all of the great things that you're doing?
Ah, so sweet. I love how you started with that question. Yes. So on all the social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, we're super responsive. If you have any questions or you want to venture out on a career here in the Middle East as a speaker, more than happy to, help you out here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
We
much.
appreciate we'll have you back, and we will be reaching out to you because
sure.
we are looking for more speeches in the Middle East, especially in North Africa, doing work in Kenya. You got it. We'll bring them to you. Thank you so much, Sana.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Take
you so
care,
much.
everyone. Thanks for
Right
having me.
on. Mikey taking the realm, but unfortunately, our next guest is not here yet. So I was trying to cut in there.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you for your efforts. Hey guys, it's really interesting because you have all these people looking for speeches, and yet there's all these resources that are being underutilized. And one of those resources is free media. And I have found there's the empty mile and the extra mile, and a lot of speakers that I know willing to go the extra mile. And the extra mile means that you're giving extra effort every once in a while. You'll end up in the extra mile. The extra mile is extremely competitive, an extremely competitive place, because it's people that aren't willing to do it every day, aren't willing to do everything they can every day. And it's amazing, when you talk to Sana, you can see that there's an empty mile of high paying opportunities for those that are willing to do it every day, to go the extra mile, not just once in a while, but all the while. And that is something that I've been helping people, understand, that especially today in the virtual world, if you're not doing it every day, you're not doing it, as far as what most people consider. I had a guy, Dan Rue, 4.5 million followers, and his friend passes away. He realizes that he's not weighting his balance of life correctly, and took off 3 or 4 months, and literally in that short amount of time, the brand had died. Right? Can't draw
the guy with the beard that was always dancing.
Yeah, and it was amazing, how in such a short period of time, if you're not in a weighted balance situation, if you're not doing it every single day, and you're missing a huge opportunity. And I want to take the time, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs feel as if they're doing everything they can. They're saying everything they can. Some even, may think it. Some may even believe it. But if you ain't feeling it, you ain't doing it every day. And there's an intuition that exists called inspiration, that you have to do it 7 days a week now, because the zero effect is real. And, I'm chuckling inside as I'm listening to Sana, because I'm like, if she knew how many people have asked me, how do I get speeches in the Middle East and North Africa? How can I get speeches in America? And they haven't even, done the due diligence to find, these types of platforms that exist in Asia. They exist, South Africa. We're getting overloaded with requests around the world. And, then you have to go to the prioritization to make sure that you're utilizing the time. For you guys, because you sit more into the mass genre of speakers, into that range that she was talking about, what do you guys do to balance your ability with all that you have going on? David, you're a senior partner at an amazing, one of the biggest and best law firms, in the world. And Mikey, you're running an incredible business in Miami in the NFT, blockchain, crypto space, which is, overwhelmingly active. How do you guys inspire yourselves every day to build your brand as speakers?
Yeah,
Great question, Dave.
I'm 3 for 3 today.
Killing it.
You know, it goes back to what we talk about, Dave, and I think you iterate it often, and it's to thine own self be true, and make sure that whether you're at a law firm, you're playing for a sports team, you're working in crypto, you're a plumber, you're a garbage man, you're a nurse, you're a teacher, a doctor, whatever it is, make sure that your efforts and your actions are dictated by your intention and your resonance. And, you know, for me, a big part of that, as you know, is meditation, but it's just taking the time to make sure that you check in and recenter and ensure that everything that we're doing, like Sana said, is credible. And it's credible because you really believe it. It's a part of who you really are and what your purpose is on this planet.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And for me, I'm thinking a lot about things that we've spoken about over the years. And something that just came to me while you were talking is you can't do just enough to thrive in a world of more than enough, right? You can't do just enough to thrive in a world of more than enough. There's opportunities out there, there's abundance out there, but you literally have to put yourself out there. You have to engage, you have to be consistent. And for me, what I've been doing and what I've realized has helped in my visibility and the ability to speak more is just consistency and intentionality with everything that I do and having a consistent message across all platforms, doing, commenting on news articles when that's appropriate, speaking to the press when that's appropriate, but that's always consistent with the message that I'm pushing outwardly to everyone else. And I think that's helped elevate me a tremendous amount. And another thing I want to share, Dave, from one of your favorite people, and as you were talking, I was chuckling inside because I'm thinking my mom, between grades, pre-K and 6, if I was assigned, questions 1 through 20 every night, I finished 1 through 20, and then this one will make me do questions 21 to 40. And I said, well, the teacher didn't assign that. She said, well, I'm assigning it to you, right? Because you can't do just enough. So I would have to always do extra work, and the teacher would never read it, never grade it, but just got conditioned early on that you can't do just enough.
I love that. It reminds me of one of my favorite people I represented, Myron Rolle. Myron Rolle, he won the Rhodes Scholar. He was the #1 recruited athlete, football player out of New Jersey, and ended up, not only playing professional football, but getting and studying and getting his graduate degree from Oxford. And now he's a brain surgeon from Harvard Med School. But he was telling me a story about how his dad made him do book reports all summer. And he told his dad, like, what? This isn't fair. And he said, yeah, well, fair is for pigs and Ferris wheels, not for my son. And so, pushing people sometimes can make a huge difference. And I think you are a classic example of someone who was parented correctly. Parents just didn't let them slide by playing video games all day and night, but actually, pushed them to understand the extra mile, and it's really benefited you. Why don't we do this? You guys, I'm doing BYOQ at 7 a.m. Pacific time, our training. I need a little bit of warm up. We got a filming today. I got to get the brain circulating here, out of the shower, right into the dragon's den. So I'll start with Mikey. You got a question for me?
Yeah. So kind of to bring back the question to you that you brought to us, there are so many things that you do and so many important things that affect people's lives in a very meaningful way. I've seen it day to day with you. How do you continue to prioritize it in a way that makes the most effective change for you and for the people that you work with?
Well, I think #1, and it's true for so many people today about feeling overwhelmed. A lot of people feel overwhelmed because there's so much opportunity. And I think the 5 daily practices, which, my emails below, have saved me so much in the productivity, accessibility, and gratitude lenses. Meaning every day, if I take the time to think about, this is what I want, this is who can help me, who I can inspire, who can inspire me, how I can get that done as a student of the calendar. And I can't tell you how hard it is to be a student of the calendar. I have daily captain, as you guys know, and I'm always amazed that sometimes the person who's the Friday captain is calling me about something on Friday, and I'm like, aren't you a student in your calendar? Aren't you at least opening up every activity you have planned? Aren't you studying the activity you don't have planned? Have you not utilized your sleep effectively? And if you know your what, your who, and your how, then you can prioritize what's most important to you. Prioritization is the antidote to feeling overwhelmed. I got Keon here, so we're going to bring him in. Thank you for that question, Mikey.
Yeah.
We'll bring him
Hey,
on.
good morning.
Thank you very much for
Thank you all.
adjusting. We appreciate you so much.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear anybody else? Mikey, David, speak up.
We can hear everyone.
Keon?
I apologize.
Hi, Keon. We can hear you.
Can you hear us? No. Matt? All right. So anyway,
Yeah.
we'll go back.
Dave, could you, just for a second, if there are new listeners, tap into for a second being a student of your calendar, what that means, just kind of general overview?
Yeah. So for me, most people don't even look at their calendar.
Yeah.
So they'll set their calendar and then it'll just remain there without ever being no attention. So attention is looking at your calendar. Okay, I got this to do, and this to do today. They put it in their calendar, and then the morning comes, they don't even look at it. And then how do they think they're going to be efficient, effective, and statistically successful with the only indicator of how we can be productive, accessible, and gracious, meaning time? You're given 1,440 minutes a day, 24 hours a day to perform activities, including sleep, which is the most frustrating activity that I have, because most people on earth go to bed and wake up more tired than when they went to bed. It would be like us three going out to dinner and being starving when we walk out, and not think there's a problem. Most people don't think there's a problem. Yeah. So, I think, number one, paying attention to your calendar would be the first step, because, I teach lowering the bar to get into coherence, to remember what to do and to actually do it. But the next level, which is a consistent, persistent pursuit of perfection or potential of utilization of time, is to study it. Now you have to give it your intention. And so to study your calendar, not only you have to look at it, but now you have to study it with the lens of productivity, accessibility, and gratitude in order to effectuate efficiencies, effectiveness, and statistical success, looking at the activity you have planned, activity you don't have planned, and your sleep, looking and deciphering activity you get paid for and activity you don't get paid for, so you don't create resistance, looking at where you may be attaching your emotions. As I talked earlier about, it's not just what you do. You can't do anything if you don't even look at your calendar. Am I saying the right things according and aligned with synergistic and supplementary to what activity I planned, I don't have planned in my sleep? Think, which is an extremely important part of being a student of your calendar, because there's so many things that you miss. We had an agenda, a logistics agenda, to get into here last night of we were all thinking about, okay, if we're flying in at this time and then they're flying in at this time and then we have someone driving with, what are they driving with? I can't tell you, in the context of getting here from Orange County to Las Vegas last night, there must have been 100 items, no exaggeration, that would have been overlooked if we didn't look at our calendar, and over 100 if we didn't study it or think about it in our minds. And then according to what we do in studying the calendar, we then can make those adjustments. The bigger the organization, you could have, I have captain Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that I don't miss things. And they don't even study it, Mike. They don't even study it. They're paid a bonus for being a student of their calendar. They don't even study. Wednesday's captain doesn't even study Wednesday a lot of times. And it's literally so frustrating to think that you got to be able to have coherence in your life to be effective in what you do. Most people, I think, I talk about 8 hours of productivity a day, and my objective is to get at least 64 hours of productivity, not work. Tons of people, bash on my video about 64 hours of productivity because it's impossible to work 64 hours. I'm not talking about work. I don't believe in work. I'm talking about comparative analysis of what people claim to be, which is 8 hours productive 5 days a week. This is the Ford, the American system. Most people aren't even close to that. Most people can't even get 8 hours of productivity. You know why? Because they don't study their calendar. They don't know what they want, who they can help, and who can help them, but they don't study it. They don't understand time. So they wonder, Bob Proctor, who just passed away, all right, we're ready to go. I was going to say this real quick. Bob Proctor that passed away, he changed my life at dinner one time in Toronto, because he said, I took a phone call. I said, is this okay, Bob? He said, it's your life, right? Typical Bob. I'm like, so I take the phone call. He says, you know, after 5 minutes, you're just visiting. Would you rather visit with that person or me? And that's where I came up with the 520 rule.
Nice.
So anyway, we're going to try this once again. We got our gracious guest. I sound like Craig Siegel. Everything's rhyming, right? The articulate alligator. We have our gracious guest, Kian Gohar. He's the founder and CEO of GeoLab. He is also an author, and he has a new best-selling book with the Harvard Business Review. That school in Boston, competing in the new world of work, that word that I don't like, how radical adaptability separates the best from the rest. And I will tell you, adaptability is the new emotional intelligence, without a doubt. And thank goodness, by the way, because it's one of my superpowers is consistency and adaptability. And so I'm going to start there. How important is being consistent to being adaptable, since those are the two superpowers that I tout and brag about?
Well, thanks, David, for having me on the show. Adaptability is a muscle that we can develop, just like we can develop consistency when you go to the gym and you work out and exercise to develop your physical muscles. You can develop your adaptability muscle by exercising various traits and behaviors that allow you to be proactive instead of being reactive to change. And so what we did in this book was try to find out what were the teams and companies doing over the last 2 years of the pandemic that allowed them to be most adaptable. We call this radical adaptability. And so I think it's really critical to be practicing it all the time. Otherwise, you kind of go back to your previous state of relaxation. And when you leave the gym, you go and rest. So practicing adaptability on a consistent basis is really critical to this world of uncertainty that we live in.
Kian, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So obviously with the pandemic came a seismic shift in professional and personal lives. And, that made adapting to succeed obvious. In normal times, how can people practice their adaptability when, folks are going through that 9 to 5, we're back on the hamster wheel and, back on our commute and life starts to feel a little bit more stagnant again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the main lessons that we learned from this research, we interviewed over 2,000 CEOs and executive teams from around the world. And one of the key lessons was that if you're constantly trying to react to change, you're behind the times. So you have to practice some of these best practices that we identified, 4 main leadership traits that every team needs to do to be radically adaptable. One is reconfiguring how you collaborate and how you can include different conversations in your teams to maximize innovation. The second one is how do you run agile tests on a consistent basis every week or every other week, and do that in a way that's not exhausting, which is the third trait around how do you build this team resilience so your energies are very high as you practice this adaptability. And the fourth one is foresight. How do you learn to look around corners? How do you start seeing the early signals of change so that you're not reacting, but instead you're proactively trying to anticipate that change? And I think it's a really interesting conversation about how do you keep practicing this adaptability. The heart of adaptability is this agile experiments, consistently trying to do new things. And we did that in the pandemic, and it was exhausting. Like, it'd be like Monday morning and you'd say, David, you go do this, and John, you go do this. Let's reconvene tomorrow and figure out what else we need to do, because the world was throwing so much in our face every single week. And we got through that, but that was like crisis adaptability. That wasn't sustainable. So what we wanted to do was to take the best elements of that and figure out how you can do that on a consistent basis, that it isn't exhausting like it was for the last 2 years, but you can practice that in a sustainable way.
Again, when we look at radical adaptability, I think certain individuals, certain organizations are inherently more or less adaptable, right? So in the animal kingdom, we say it's not the fastest or the strongest overall of the species that survives. It's the ones that can adapt the best. So a lizard, by example, is able to change its color to mesh with its environment so it doesn't get eaten. A lion is a lion no matter where it goes. It can't change. So when looking at radical adaptability, how important is it to do a radical inventory of the individual or the organization to figure out, are they more or less like a lizard or a lion, to figure out how we're going to then change them?
Yeah, I think it's really critical. I mean, one of the big things we learned in the pandemic was that collaboration and thinking about sort of how you innovate doesn't matter exactly how far you are from each other in the physical distance, but how far you are away from each other in an affinity distance, like from your team. And you have to better understand sort of like where your team's energy levels are, how you're doing on an individual level. Listen, we come to work every single day with different levels of personal resilience and energy. Some people have more financial resources, some have more family and social resources, but we have to figure out how we can be adaptable in a way that we can accomplish our goals, yet know that people work differently every single day. And the most high performing teams in the pandemic really demonstrated what we call this ability to diagnose team resilience, because that's really, really critical. And being able to crowdsource sort of within your team on a consistent basis what level of resilience you have to accomplish a certain task every single week, and then being able to boost the team up so that you can cross the finish line together. And a lot of that conversation really begins by really getting to know your individual team members, and then them getting to be responsible for each other's behavior and each other's success. And it's not always easy to have these kinds of conversations and thinking about sort of where you are, but it's really critical. And we'd recommend that on a consistent basis, like once every 2 weeks or so, the team leader says, let's figure out, like, what are we not talking about? What is the elephant in the room? What are the muscles that we are not practicing right now that we really should, in order to be able to accomplish the task that we've given to ourselves?
Amazing, because looking at adaptability, which has been since the beginning of time a necessity, and now in the business world it's become a true component, as you said, a habit and a strategy. To that end, one of the things that's difficult in a collective consciousness or in a group setting for these coordinated collaborative movements that are adaptable, one thing to be adaptable personally, but to amplify that through an organization is difficult, is radical humility. There's this differentiator between ignorant, humble people, radically humble, and ignorant, arrogant people. And in the context of business, especially leadership, has an ignorant arrogance because they're so afraid that they don't know what they don't know. And, things are happening so fast. One of my favorite lines at the beginning of the pandemic was, "Oh my God, Mr. Meltzer, what are we going to do? Things are changing so fast. Oh my God, there's so much change." I'm like, what's different between today and 10,000 years ago? There's change every day. And the only one that likes change is a wet baby. So let's figure out what we have control of. And in that context of radical humility is gratitude, forgiveness, and accountability. You've already mentioned the effective communication. How does those three things help us adapt to have a lens of gratitude, to be forgiving, and to be accountable?
I love that question. We do think that we know everything in our own business, and typically in the past, if you were trying to collaborate and solve a problem, you would call a meeting and you'd get 5 or 6 people into a room, and you figured that you had all the answers on the inside of your corporation, and that's just the way the business works, because that's the way we were trained. But in the pandemic, we realized we didn't have the answers and we didn't know what to do. And a lot of the business executives said, I need to figure out where are we going. And that's where this project initiated was my friend Keith Farazi and I started this research project to figure out what were leaders doing when we were all locked down in the spring of 2020. And we crowdsourced these conversations. We literally had hundreds and hundreds of town halls where we invited the world's top leaders while they were stuck at home to have these conversations so they can learn real time from each other, because they didn't know what to do, right? Nobody had a playbook for how to work when you're all locked down at home. And so this idea of being really open to new insight was, I think, for the first time in the collective consciousness of the business world, really finally seeped in, saying, maybe I need to crowdsource ideas from outside of myself or my team. And that's where we saw collaboration just become exponential. And companies did tremendously well by looking outside of their teams to say, okay, where can we get new ideas from our partners, from our vendors, from other teams in the organization that we don't know, who can help us figure out what the right ideas are. Now, this is it's a mindset shift, right? In terms of how do you think about, I don't have all the answers, but how can I look elsewhere? And what we found was that being able to collaborate in an asynchronous way, being able to collaborate in a way that's crowdsourcing ideas was so incredibly powerful. And we hope that if anybody reads the book, the one thing they take away is that you can collaborate very differently than you did before. The pandemic made us reassess all of our assumptions around how we live and how we socialize and learn, but it didn't actually change how we think about how we collaborate. And so when we're going back to the office or when we're going back to work, quote unquote, I really hope people think, how can I not lose what I learned from the last 2 years in terms of being open to new ideas and receiving that with gratitude and knowing that I don't know everything.
That's tremendous. I want to highlight something because I just feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about it. So you were the former executive director of a foundation called XPRIZE, and one of your roles there was designing things called moonshots to solve the world's most important challenges. And I want to know, was there consistency in some of these moonshots that were designed? Do we have consistent solutions for some of the biggest problems?
I think there is a consistent way of thinking about how you can solve a problem. And at the XPRIZE, we never really cared what the end solution was as long as the problem was solved. And so we always looked at trying to design moonshots in a way that, again, crowdsourced ideas from the world's best people. One of the most amazing things about the pandemic, I mean, not that the pandemic was great, but it allowed us to reach out using these new communication tools to talk to anybody from anywhere in the world and get ideas and get their talent. So now we have the ability to tap into the cognitive intelligence of the world. At the XPRIZE, we did that for a long time. We designed competitions and we created a structure and we incentivized the world to go solve a particular problem. And we said, we want you to just solve X. And we defined what X was. And then the world would go about and crowdsource it through the teams that they wanted to figure out. And so in terms of figuring out what is the consistency of solving a problem, it's about knowing that you don't have all the answers, but you have to ask the right questions. That was the most important learning lesson from designing Moonshot to the XPRIZE, which is, are you asking the right questions before solving a problem? And that, I think, is so key. That came so clear in our research over the last 2 years about how you collaborate. Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking about what business are you really in? And so that is a very common thread in our work for the last couple of years, and then when I was designing Moonshots at XPRIZE.
Ken, with regard to Moonshots and XPRIZE, or what you might tap into in the book with regard to radical adaptability, how important is it and what role does it play in identifying our own egos and going through perhaps an ego death or something that we have to do to say, I may be the problem. You know, this may need to change. And how hard is that for people to adapt when part of the adaptability might be their own personal need to change?
I think the personal transformation is key. And I hope that people have spent the last 2 years not only reassessing their priorities and their assumptions about how they want to live, but also about who they are and what they prioritize. And I think we've done this on a mass scale. I think early on in the pandemic, we were all locked down, and it was the first time in global history where the entire world collectively at the same time was thinking about, what does this all mean? And what does it mean for my family and how I want to live? And as we've come out of the pandemic, I hope that people tap into that idea of what does this mean for me and what do I want? And that personal development is really, really key. I think, having that humility is everybody has the capacity for it, to be able to say, this is what I don't know. This is the team that can help me cross the finish line. This is what I need to go figure out. And being open to that is really key to success. We were able to practice that really well during the crisis of the pandemic, but being able to say, there's a lot for me to learn is an insight that most executives don't practice once they get to a certain level, because they practice that muscle of ego, that muscle of being the person who has to know all the answers. And I hope that the lessons from the last 2 years can allow people to say, I don't know all the answers, and I've had a personal transformation, and now I want to figure out how can we do things better. And that's what we want executives to really be able to practice to be successful in this new era.
Great.
Awesome. Keon, thank you so much. And say hi to Keith for us. He was a great guest as well on here. If you want to learn how radical adaptability separates the best from the rest, make sure you get a copy of Competing in the New World of Work, even though I don't like that word. Kian Gohar, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, David. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
We'll have you guys back. Say hi to Keith. Take care.
I will. And if your listeners are interested, we have a free video course of all the main learnings. And you can go to radicaladaptability.com. Actually, radicallyadapt.com. Again, radicallyadapt.com, and you can see that video course for free. Thanks so much.
We'll post that up there as well, radicallyadapt.com. Thank you so much, Kian. We'll have you back. And
thanks, David. Have a great morning, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Last but not least, to ask us a question is the CEO of the Stub Group. John Horn is in the house here on Friday. He is the CEO of Stub Group. John, welcome to Office Hours.
David, thank you so much for having me.
You got it, my friend. Well, give us a little bit quick 1 minute elevator pitch on your company, and I think you have a question for the three Stooges.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a digital advertising agency here at Stub Group, working with all kinds of businesses in the advertising space to help them find new customers, engage their existing customers online, which of course is where we're all spending our time these days. So the question that I have to ask of you gentlemen is related really to the talent acquisition side of things. So we're always looking for great talent to bring on board to our team who have deep experience in our industry to be able to work with our clients and help them grow. And I'm curious to see what methods, what ways are you seeing work well right now to go out and identify good talent that is either looking for a new job or is interested in making that switch, and how do you think through how to identify them, attract them, and ultimately onboard them onto your teams?
I can go first if you guys want.
Sure.
So, no, everybody's always looking for a new job all the time, whether or not they want to admit it. They're always seeking an opportunity that's best for themselves, their family, their career, their growth, etc. One thing I've had success with is polling my superstars within my organization. Hey, did you work with anybody at your previous stop that would be helpful or would be a good fit here? I feel like that's the best way to vet someone and get talent that we've seen their work product prior. And because it's a personal connection, that person reaching out, hey, I work at Stub Group, this is what we're doing, this is what we're about. You've got a leg up in the recruitment process. You got somebody vouching for you, both on your side, but then also vouching for the applicant. So that's one thing that I think is a good way to look at this.
Yeah, and for me, John, good morning. It's finding those people that have really hit their rhythm, whatever that rhythm is. And we all have our own, right? So regardless of what it is specifically that they're doing, are they doing it because they're earning a paycheck and coming home? That's a totally different employee or personality or influence or whomever in the universe than someone who's really found their space in life and is doing it because it resonates with them as far as who they are specifically. That's going to be the person that performs. That's going to be the person that I'm really eyeballing.
Mm-hmm.
Great. It's not what you say, it's what they hear. My answer puts into context, part and parcel of what the boys have suggested. So the first step in recruitment and retention, which is the number one critical business issue that exists today for all companies because of where we're at in the talent pool and attitudinally what we've developed, is number one, you need as a company to know the skill that you're looking for, the knowledge of not only what, but who, and the desire or that feeling that Michael suggested, right? Like you want to find, and if you know the skills and knowledge and the desire for the person you're recruiting or retaining, then you implement what Dave Marino was talking about, which was ask, right? Ask in person, on the phone, via email, traditional media in the recruitment and retention space, and ask in social media. The aggregate of the effect of knowing, which is, like so many investors out there that, pretend like they know what they're talking about, and I'll ask them, so what's your timing and risk tolerance? I don't know. Then how are you even talking about an investment to me? If you can't tell me what you want, right? The same thing when people talk about retention and recruitment to me, it's like, okay, what skills are you looking for? What knowledge of what and who? And what type of desire are you looking for? Michael looks for people that have a passion that resonates with them. Other people like me, I look for people that, have a must, be what I can be, right? I'm looking for a 7-dayer. That means much more to me than somebody that's in love with their product, but it's your choice. You're the one recruiting and retaining talent, just like it's your choice to invest in a lottery ticket or not. If you know your timing and risk tolerance, and 1 in a billion for $2 is in your context, terrific. But the key is, once you establish that foundation, you got to ask, and we can, create a chain of relativity of who has the best pools of asking internally. David suggests that's one of the best places to ask. I found you have to be careful when you're looking internally, because a lot of people make the mistake that I did when I was young, which is they put their friends in a position that's over their head, and then they get blamed for when they can't perform, but they were doing them a favor. So you have to be aware of that. Each aspect of asking has its own positives and negatives, and your awareness will help you. So I think it's the number one critical business issue. I suggest everybody knowing the skills and knowledge and desire, and then asking appropriately in person, on the phone, via email, and media. And that's what I would do.
Thank you. Those are great thoughts. Very much appreciate that advice.
You got it, my friend. John Horn, check him out. He is the CEO of Stub Group, stubgroup.com. Thanks for joining us. And we did it. We made it through another Friday edition. We're over 300 episodes of Office Hours, and they just keep coming. We're here in Las Vegas at the Lobby in the Wynn. If you want to swing by and watch the filming of Office Hours, it'll be on Apple TV, Bloomberg. We are filming here the next 4 Fridays in Las Vegas. So swing by, see us. We'll be doing episodes all day long. You can see us right through the glass. Mr. Marino's out here hanging and swinging as usual. So we appreciate him being and taking the trip before the NBA All-Star Game, which is also happening this week. If there's not enough going on, right? You push Super Bowl back to Valentine's Day back to filming of Office Hours back to the NBA All-Star Game. And that's just 7 days. Oh my goodness. Anyway, boys, takeaway of the day. Which one of you wants to grab it?
I'll go first. I think for me, it's the knowledge and the recognition that the only constant in life is change. And we have to acknowledge that change. We have to embrace that change. And once we can, we see that, building out a speaker platform for a group of individuals now that came from a place of pain probably early on for Sauna. And when we talk to Kian, what he's doing with regard to adaptation and changing with the times coming out of the pandemic and John's question. So for me, that's the clearest takeaway today.
Awesome takeaway. Mine is just consistency. Consistency is key no matter what you're doing, whether you're operating in a place of redundancy or the world is changing quickly around you. You've got to be consistent with your values, got to be consistent with your intention. You got to be consistent with your actions.
I love it. And both are relative, right? I remember Miles at the Super Bowl asking me, what's the gold C on the jersey for? And I said, consistency. I go, that's the most consistent player. I thought it was for the captain. I said, exactly.
There you go. I like that.
Exactly. That's who's going to captain the ship, the most consistent player. And you got to live in that empty mile. For me, my takeaway is interesting is, there's so much opportunity. Like you're sitting there and I get so many people looking for what other people are looking for, right? Like there's these matches, and every single person, there's people looking for jobs, and you have people, like the Stub Group there helping you. There's people looking for speaking engagements. There's people looking for help in adapting, whatever it may be. And not only are they out there, but they're accessible. And so my takeaway for the day is to be more interested than interesting. Stop looking for what you don't want, what's missing, what other people want for you. Go and find the answer. It's there. You're already connected to it. And you have the capability via technology, especially, to find it. The answers are already there. Somebody's already there looking for you to help you. You just have to find it. clear the interference between you and that answer by being more interested than interesting. All right, boys, we will see you 7 a.m. We don't stop. We're consistent. We're going to do training at 7 a.m. even though we got filming and NBA All-Star Game and all the other things going on. We're going to be consistent. So 7 a.m. Pacific time, IG, Clubhouse, TikTok. We make it happen on every platform. Over 60,000 people registered for today's training. And it's a simple training, BYOQ. You bring the questions like my boys, and I will bring the answers. I look forward to it. Appreciate both of you. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you both so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys in an hour and 4 minutes.
Most interested man in the world, Dave Meltzer.
That's my brand. Yeah, one time I asked over 100 open-ended questions just to find out how I could find someone to help me. How about that? The most interested man in the world. Be more interested than interesting, my friends. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. David@dmeltzer.com. If you want those 5 daily practices, if you want student of the calendar exercises, just reach out to me. David@dmeltzer.com. Please join me for free training every Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific time on Clubhouse, IG, TikTok, all your favorite platforms. Register at david@dmeltzer.com. My text number is below as well, so check that out. Thank you, Matt, for producing such an amazing show. Looking forward. Swing by the Wynn if you're in Las Vegas. Check us out. We'll be filming in the studio in the lobby of the Wynn. Have a great day.